Hi everyone, welcome to tonight's episode of the Egg Whisperer Show. For those of you who don't know me, I just want to introduce myself and let you know who I am and what I'm all about. My name is Dr. Amy Avazadeh, and I'm a fertility specialist, which basically means I went to school for a really long time to figure out how to make a momlet. And for those of you who don't know what a momlet is, that's when an egg and sperm come together to make a baby. That takes years of training, and I've been in my practice now for 10 years, and with all this experience, I feel like there's so much information I can share with you out there in the world so you can learn and make your path to pregnancy as short and smooth as possible. So tonight's show is titled, How to Tell You're Fertile, because I can tell you almost all the patients that come and see me, they say it took us a little while to figure out exactly when to time intercourse, how often to time intercourse. And believe it or not, there are patients that didn't know that there are actually tests available that tell you when you're the most fertile. So as a fertility doctor, just knowing all these fertility faux pas that are out there, I just thought it would be fun to do a show all about this because basically this is what I talk about every day, all day, and that's the best F word ever, and that's fertility. And we all have a fertility story. I mean, anywhere I go, whether it's the supermarket or some sort of function, a social function or a party, and I just share a little bit about what I do, people share their stories with me, whether it's a sister who just had a miscarriage or that they're just recently finding out that they're pregnant. So everyone has some sort of connection to fertility. And so I find if we educate the masses, and then we can sometimes, if you're watching this, support someone else who's having a fertility story, maybe an issue, and then perhaps their problems are going to go away a lot sooner from something that you share with them from this show. So the Egg Whisperer Show is all about factual, accurate information delivered hopefully in a really fun way. Think of it as a fertility fun chat. I mean, that's what I love to do, is just talk about what I do every day, all day long, from the time I wake up, literally until the time I go to bed. And so I'm here to provide you emotional support, and I want you to know that no matter where you are in your journey, I want you to remain hopeful, because one of the slogans I always say is, there's always a way. So if you want to be a parent, sometimes it takes a little bit more work, but there certainly is always a way. So I see articles sometimes, and I say to myself, oh my goodness, wouldn't this be incredible if this type of technology was out there for fertility patients? And when I saw this, and I'll tell you what this is, I basically said, you know, a lot of people actually think that something like this already exists. And I'll tell you what this is. So basically, there's a concept that you can basically take a selfie and then send it into your doctor, and then your doctor will tell you what your BMI is, or your body size is, and then other medical features about yourself. So it's basically sending in a selfie for medical diagnostic testing, like your blood pressure. Wouldn't that be awesome if there was some sort of fertility selfie? Like you could take a picture and send it in to somebody, fertilityselfie.com, quick. Director, buy that GoDaddy website. I'm serious. No, that day will never ever happen, because your fertility isn't skin deep. It doesn't matter how awesome you look on the outside, how great you feel, although those things are really, really good. Those aren't sensors for your fertility. And during tonight's show, I'm going to talk to you about the different tests that you can do and how you can become more fertility aware and save yourself from a lot of the fertility faux pas that I see a lot of patients making. So for now, there's no fertility selfie, but I wish, because if you're a fertility patient, another thing I sometimes wish is, you know, those airport terminal security checks where you just walk through, you put your hands up and you get a puff of air. I'm always thinking when I walk through that, I said, wouldn't that be awesome as if at the same time you can, you know, have your ovaries checked out, or maybe get a sperm count, kind of like a fertility kiosk at the airport. One day, that will be a dream come true for me. Believe it or not, that would be a dream come true. So as you all know, it's the first week of January. So I thought, again, this would be a perfect show to do. Just start with the basics and teach people about how to tell you're fertile. And then I said to myself, it's quite incredible that in a 365-day calendar year, literally, you can get pregnant maybe 12 of those days if you have regular cycles. Imagine that. An egg drops, it's maybe in the fallopian tube for 24 hours and can get fertilized, and then your ovulation phase or fertility window is now closed. So that's a lot of effort to try and get pregnant for such a small window of time. And so if you don't understand exactly how to time these things, then you could be completely missing your window. So it's really important to kind of know what the clues are, to understand maybe the language that we use when we talk about fertility and ovulation windows. So that's what I'm going to teach you right now. So the easiest thing to do is Google image menstrual hormones during fertility hormones, during a menstrual cycle. And there are charts that you can find on so many different websites. And when you do that, you're going to actually look at different fertility tracking apps. And there's so many out there, and it's just important to find one that's good for you. And so basically, the menstrual cycle is split up into almost 3 stages: menstrual cycle when you're bleeding, and then pre-ovulatory and post-ovulatory, or the lead up until when you're ovulating, and then the second half of your cycle after you've ovulated. You can also think about it as the follicular phase, as your body's recruiting that dominant follicle to release, and then the luteal phase, which is the part of your cycle where you have a cyst called a corpus luteum secreting progesterone. And so if you look at the calendar here, you'll kind of see these different stages, starting with the follicle growing, and then ovulation, and then the corpus luteum like I just shared with you, and then it turns into something called a corpus albicans, and then hopefully you're pregnant, and then that cyst actually continues to secrete progesterone. And then here you'll see the body temping. That's something that a lot of people do, is where they take their temperature first thing in the morning. And I'll tell you why I don't advise that in a little bit. But basically with body temping, your temperature rises about 12 to 24 hours after ovulation. And then it's basically a really good test to say that you've already ovulated. But if you've already ovulated and then you haven't been intimate, then that leaves little time for, the baby dance is what I'm going to call it tonight. And then as far as your hormones, the estrogen level is nice and low in the beginning of the cycle, and estrogen comes from the dominant follicle and is secreted by that egg that ovulates, and then the estrogen level comes down after ovulation, and the progesterone level comes up, and the 2 hormones, FSH and LH, they go up around ovulation. And then there's certainly things that change in the menstrual cycle. But one of the biggest myths that I am constantly trying to dispel are that when you ovulate, what that means is that you are the most fertile, and with that day is going to stay the same every single cycle. And that's not true. So the other thing I find is that people rely on their phones to tell them exactly when you're ovulating. It's not like you can go to Siri and say, "When am I ovulating?" So certainly there are so many tests out there, and they're not all accurate. So I want to go through some of the different tests that you can do. So I talked a little bit about temping, and there are many different ways of temping, so many different. There are thermometers that you can put basically under your tongue. There are lots of companies out there that have Wi-Fi enabled thermometers, so you can go into Amazon and put in ovulation kit and temperature, and you're going to find so many different options out there and see what's right for you. There are, let's say, patches you can place on your skin. There are vaginal sensors as well that you can use. So if that's something that you want to try, I would say go ahead and try it and see how you're going to understand your body's chemistry. But this is the problem. They're not as accurate. So I've had patients say to me, "Amy, I'm on cycle day number 2, which means the day after my period has started, and my temp is still elevated, and my monitor says that must mean I have a luteal phase defect." And I would say, no, I would just say that that monitor just isn't as accurate, and that's really not what it says, because if you're on your period, the luteal phase is actually over. So I'm not so worried about those kinds of things. And then when it comes to charting, definitely I have patients who come in with like years and years, literally years and years of charts. And I actually find that information quite valuable, because if you've put in that much effort into tracking your periods, tracking your ovulation, I definitely want to study those records and then just kind of tell you what they tell me. And a lot of times when they're really nice charts, they just tell me that your body's doing exactly what it needs to do. And it isn't unusual for someone to have, let's say, an OPK, which stands for Ovulation Predictor Kit, that is not necessarily saying positive, but you're still ovulating. That just means the test is super inaccurate. And then you'll hear this term, egg white cervical mucus. E.g., let me see if I'm going to get this right. Egg white, no, I didn't get that right. EWCM. So the egg white cervical mucus refers to the discharge down there, basically, and it's really stretchy right before ovulation. So that's a sign that you are very, very fertile and approaching your most fertile window of time. So if your positive OPK isn't there, but you're seeing all these physical signs that you're ovulating, well, go with that. Don't rely on a test that tells you whether you should be having sex or not, because those tests may be wrong and you might be missing the best fertile window. And the other thing is timing of intercourse. So a lot of people wait for it. What they wait for is they wait for that positive test and they say, now we can have sex. But sometimes ovulation has already occurred, or they're not having sex long enough after the positive test, because that positive test means ovulation may occur in 36 hours. It could even be 48 or 72. So you may want to consider being intimate, and if you've studied your cycle really well, 3 days before that positive OPK and even 3 days after, and perhaps time it every other day and even every day. For some people, more is not worse than more. I don't think that's a sentence. I think I meant more is better. But if you are asking me the question, can we have sex 3 times a day? The answer is listen to your body. If you want to have sex 3 times a day, you can have sex 3 times a day. But when it comes to, let's say, the most accurate scientific studies and what they suggest intercourse once a day to once every 2 days. And that has to do with sperm DNA quality, and the best DNA quality seems to be when ejaculation occurs 24 to 48 hours after the last ejaculation. And there doesn't need to be necessarily a save-up period where a guy is saving up his sperm, unless, of course, there are some other issues in bed such that it's just harder to get it, be intimate as often, and then you should listen to those signals and not push things too hard. I keep saying words that are cracking me up, not necessarily cracking me up, but I'm trying to crack everyone up in the room here, and I hope you're laughing as well, because I'm saying hard a lot. My point is that no one likes a sex emergency. We call those sperm emergencies. And that's when you feel like there's a 911 call, your OPK is positive, and it's time to have sex, and everyone is stressed, because psychologically speaking, that can make it really, really hard. I said that word again, to make a baby if everyone's stressed around that, fertility emergency or sexual emergency. So find other ways, other clues, other ways to talk to each other about how you're going to clue each other in, or maybe not clue each other in about when you're most fertile, and have fun as much as you can. Although when you're trying for a really, really long time, everyone knows that it's not like it is in the soap operas where you're ripping each other's clothes off and speaking Spanish. I just threw that speaking Spanish thing. I'm just thinking about the telenovelas. But if only it was really like that. So when it comes to how to tell you're fertile, like I said, it isn't just about temping and all the fertility monitors. There are actual tests that can tell you what's going on with your fertility. So your fertility basically is made up of, a number of things: your fertility hormone levels, your genetics, your lifestyle, your uterus, your environment. And there are actual tests that you can do. And that's why I started eggwhisperer.com. So eggwhisperer.com is a site that you can go to and get your fertility levels checked, and I can review them and talk to you about them. So the first level that I like to do is called FSH hormone, which stands for follicle stimulating hormone. And if you go back to that chart that I showed you at the beginning of the show, what you'll see is that FSH hormone is at the lowest at the very beginning of the cycle, and we use it as a diagnostic tool. And it kind of tells us how good your eggs are and what your fertility rates are based on your age and that level. And certainly no one is just one snapshot at one point in time, meaning you're not defined by just this number, because like I said, fertility is complex and there are a number of factors that go into it. So we also look at the estrogen level at the same time, and then another hormone called Antimullerian hormone. And this is a hormone secreted by cells that surround eggs, and the higher the level, the more eggs you have. And together you put all this information together and get a really good sense as to what's going on with your egg health. Okay? And then the other thing is, are your cycles regular or irregular? And then when do you even go to see a doctor? So for me, if I had someone watching here, I would say there's never a bad time to go see a fertility doctor, whenever you're ready. So if you feel like you want to do a fertility check-in, just like we talk about family planning, I want patients to do family preparation planning. So see a fertility doctor, get your levels checked, understand them more. But if you are having irregular cycles, that might be a sign to get seen earlier, and also might be a sign that you might have a condition like PCOS, and I've done a show on PCOS before, be sure to watch it, polycystic ovary syndrome. I also refer to it as please confirm this ovary syndrome, or another condition called decreased ovarian reserve. And they can sometimes be confused where a patient is misdiagnosed with having too many eggs when actually she's running out of eggs. So it's really important to get tests and understand what's going on. And if you're dealing with that, you want to get seen sooner than later so you understand what's going on, because if every pregnancy is from an ovulation, if you're not ovulating regularly, it can be certainly very, very frustrating to be temping and tracking and doing your OPKs when you're not seeing anything on your tests. And then other things that might come up would be something like a thyroid disorder, and these things are very, very easy to treat. So one of the biggest things people tell me at their initial appointments with me is, I think I know why we're not getting pregnant. And I almost always know what the answer to that is, or what that question is. And I say, well, what is it? What is it? What is it that you think it is? And they say, well, every time we have sex, all the swimmers come out. And I say, well, actually, that's quite normal. And I know this picture isn't the best, analogy for this. I'm really, really bad at analogies. I try, but I really suck at it. But when it comes to gravity, swimmers go up just like little astronauts in space, and then all the semen comes out. And the swimmers keep swimming up the cervical canal. They get trapped in the cervical mucus, and then they eventually go up into the uterus, into the fallopian tube, and I'll do a demonstration right now. So imagine here's a little, I should do it with this hand. Here's a little, and I'm a fallopian tube right here. Here's a little sperm cell. The sperm cell is going to go here, and then wait for the egg as the egg gets picked up by the fallopian tube, but the semen will eventually come out, and that's actually quite normal. But I tell my patients, look, right after intercourse, if you want, put a pillow under your butt, 10 minutes, lie down there, and then go use the restroom and go pee to minimize the risk of a urine infection, okay? So here are some fertility faux pas, and if you know this before you start trying to have a baby, then perhaps you can avoid some of the mistakes a lot of my patients have made and realize it after we've met, and then they make these subtle changes and voila, they're pregnant. So one of them is not timing intercourse right. So that means, for example, waiting too late to be intimate during the cycle and waiting maybe 2 or 3 days after that positive test, or not having sex enough before. I think the key is to have sperm sitting there. I'm going to avoid doing that little, maneuver or my little dance move there. But I'm a great dancer, if you guys didn't know. Great dancer. So as far as timing intercourse, it's really good to have sperm waiting for the egg, and sperm sits in the fallopian tube. Some people say 3 to even maybe 6 days. Sits there and waits for that egg until that egg actually drops. And once that egg is there, it can be there 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours. It's hard to tell exactly how long that egg's there. So that's why it's important to definitely have the sperm waiting for the egg. The other thing, another fertility faux pas, is using lubricants. So if you haven't watched my live sperm show, I recommend you go back and watch it, because what I did is I showed what happens to sperm when exposed to lubricants that everyone thinks might be pro-fertility, for example, pre-seed. But what I found, and it's something that I was told by one of my professors, is that some of these lubricants, while they're called pro-fertility, actually kill sperm. And household products that almost everyone has, like olive oil, canola oil, even coconut oil, can actually not inhibit sperm the way that some of these pro-fertility lubricants do. So be sure to take a look at the lubricants that you're using, and at the end of the day, if you have any doubt, don't use it, or just use water or saliva. And then realize it takes more than just sex. It does. And the reason why I bring that up is I have patients say, we have sex every single day. And I say, well, this is a good time to do other types of check-ins, like, are your fallopian tubes open? Do you have good swimmers? Let's get them checked out. And what do we know about your egg health? So again, these are all tests that you can do to find out how fertile you are. And based on that information, you're going to have a really good sense as to what you should be doing to improve your chances. Maybe change your lifestyle, drink less or almost not at all, cut out smoking, stop smoking marijuana, get your BMI to a healthy BMI. So there's so many things that you can do, but unless you did all the tests or talk to a fertility doctor like me, how would you know exactly what to do next? But certainly, you can always go to the Egg Whisperer Show or email me your questions, email@eggwhisperer.com, and I'm here for you to help you along the way. So I'm a big fan of asking questions and asking more questions. So if you have a fertility question, like I said, be sure to email me and join the show, because as a society, I want everyone to avoid as much as possible the human condition that we call infertility, and I want everyone to reach their goals of being a parent. So thank you for joining me tonight. I look forward to seeing you next week on the next Egg Whisperer Show. Have a great night.
Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show, a program exclusively designed to promote reproductive health awareness and discuss fertility preservation options. Here is your host, Harvard-educated fertility specialist, Dr. Amy.
She's known as the Egg Whisperer.
Fertility expert Dr. Amy Abazadeh.
And you have yet another success story
Just launched by an East Bay fertility doctor.
Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show, a program exclusively designed to promote reproductive health awareness and discuss fertility preservation options. Here is your host, the Harvard-educated fertility specialist, Dr. Amy.
She's known